Hey guys, and welcome to today's video. So I've got a very interesting guest on with me today, Israel, live
Hi.
from Hong Kong. So the reason I wanted to get in contact with Israel, apart from learning, many languages and being very knowledgeable about just language learning in general, he's done a lot of work recently for the Cantonese learning community. So I wanted to talk a bit about what he's doing for Cantonese and a bit just about his general language journey in general. So how's it going, Israel? Do you want to give a quick introduction to yourself, and then we can just get talking about a bunch of different topics?
Yeah, great. Yeah, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me here. Well, I'm currently actually based in Birmingham, England at the moment, so not quite live from Hong Kong. But yeah, I'm mainly a musician. I'm a composer. I just graduated from Oxford with a composition degree, and then I after in a few months after I graduated, I wanted to do something different, so I kind of left that behind for a bit, and then I started working more closely on my blog and stuff. My blog was started a couple of years back when I was in Sweden doing my year abroad. I wanted to document my journeys and everything that I did there, and so I started a language learning blog like every single polyglot ever did.
Yep.
Yeah. Uh, and then I gradually just wrote a lot of traveling and then moved on to kind of like language learning techniques and stuff. And then I abandoned it for a couple of years. And then now I'm just kind of like resurrecting the blog. And I also added a Cantonese version of it. So it's
Mhm.
now bilingual, which is a lot of work for me. Uh,
Yeah, I can imagine.
yeah, and not every article is bilingual. So I just kind of work on each side of the blog for a bit every week or so. Yeah, so that's what I'm doing at the moment. Most recently, I started my podcast, which is a Cantonese podcast about languages and linguistics in general, together with two friends who are interested in linguistics. And what I'm trying to do is to kill two birds with one stone. I'm producing a language podcast for Cantonese speakers and also kind of learning material
Mhm.
for Cantonese learners.
Yeah. How do you say two birds with one stone in Cantonese? What was it? Yak koi long dat, something like that.
一石二鳥.
Oh yeah, I
That's
guess you can say the
the
literal
classical
translation.
one. Or what I like to say is 一雞兩味. So one chicken for two dishes. Yeah,
That
that's
sounds
like
very
the
very
more
Hong Kongy.
colloquial. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I want to say like it's a lot of work to put behind into going into a blog, like even in one language, let alone two. So I think I was gonna rewind a bit before. Maybe I'm incorrect in this, but I think did you work on Cantonese conversations with Ollie?
I did, yeah. I think that was
So,
in 2017 where he,
17.
because, well, I can't remember the chronology of it.
So just
I
to give a bit of overview to people who don't know what Cantonese
Yeah.
conversations is, just before you go into that. So a few years ago now, 3 years ago maybe, a polyglot called Ollie Richards, who runs the blog I'll Teach You a Language, wanted to fill the gap between beginner and advanced content for Cantonese. So he basically got a load of conversations recorded, like natural conversations between people from Hong Kong, and just transcribed the whole thing to kind of make resource for Cantonese learners. And I think, as I said, Israel just confirmed he was involved in that. So yeah, what were you about to say?
Yeah, think around that time he came to Hong Kong. He was learning Cantonese at the time, so he just kind of stayed in Yulong for a bit. We met up a couple of times,
That's where my
and
girlfriend's from.
then,
Sorry.
hmm?
That's where my girlfriend's from, Yuan Long.
Oh, really? Oh, cool.
I think she
Yeah,
went to the
so
same high school as you, actually. Maybe.
don't
Anyway, sorry, it's
so
beside the
no
point.
idea. Didn't realize that. Yeah, so and then yeah, Ollie realized that well, there's a huge, it just had a huge gap between the materials because there's lots of textbooks and other materials for basic Cantonese that are phrase books and everything, and then there's native level material, but then there's nothing that helps you progress. And most of that material that exists in like an intermediate level is for like Mandarin speakers and so on, and that's
Mhm.
why everyone who wants to learn Cantonese is recommended to start with Mandarin and then move on to Cantonese. So yeah, as you said, he got a bunch of people to record some dialogues and conversations, and then he got me involved in that by working on the translations. So what we actually did was have another friend of mine transcribe everything you'd ping, and then I would proofread that and then translate everything to English in a sort of compact document of everything, and there's also a vocab list that we made. Yeah. So I think that was a really good resource, and it kind of
Yeah,
inspired
it's
me
super
to do
super
something different.
useful.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I think if you go on the page, there's like, but I've got like a video testimony at the bottom or something. I think.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you think of it anyway? I'm
Um.
not sure how many ways you have with using it.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's two things I want to say. First was about the filling the gap in resources and about how true it is that Cantonese lacks resources that are for intermediate learners. And then the second thing I want to say is how useful the resource was itself. So I'll go with the second one first because that's probably a shorter topic. Um. So in terms of how useful it was, like you have full speed. I really like that it wasn't slowed down. It was really like raw, like so many things. Like his conversations after Cantonese conversations, I thought were a lot worse because he ended up like slowing down the speed of the conversation, and he did it to write a story and get it recorded professionally. But it ruins that kind of like the fact that it was literally just raw audio and just normal conversations, I think was what made it so good because it's so close to what you're going to be encountering in real life.
Hmm.
And that's for me where the useful is. And the fact that everything was written down exactly as it was said is really, really useful. Now, so that was really good. And it did fill a gap. And the thing that I didn't like was that he had English and the Yuping and the characters all next to each other. I'd rather have them separate. I'd have myself having to force myself not to look at the English and force myself to only look at the Yuping when I was trying
Hmm.
to learn.
Hmm.
But really, I shouldn't have to do that. They should be like on separate pages, in my opinion, so you can just ignore one and
Right.
choose which one you want to look at.
So I imagine that's
Um,
kind of like watching a foreign TV show with English subtitles, and you have to just stop yourself from looking at the subtitles.
yeah, I mean, effectively, it's like watching with two sets of subtitles on at the same time, and you're supposed to force yourself to look at one instead of the other. Whereas really, you want an option to turn the English subs off, and then you can just choose. Like it's good to have, but I want the option to not use it if I don't want to use it,
Hmm.
and the option to use it if I want to use it. I think that's the way to do it best. And talking about, I think maybe you might know a bit about this as well. Like, how much does it fill the gap? I think if you don't know any characters, I think what he said is true. But with my experience after, when I started realizing there is a lot of books and blogs and comic books and things and YouTube videos with subtitles and manga that are even translated into Cantonese, I think that it's very hard to close a gap from beginner to advanced if you don't know the characters. But if you do, then there's quite a lot available that you can get out there. A lot more so than I was led to believe initially.
Okay.
So I actually think, if you do know the characters and put in the time, I think there is actually a fair amount of stuff you can find. I don't know if you'd agree with that statement,
I don't
but
know. I
I know,
haven't learned it myself.
but I mean, I think one of the books I read in Cantonese, for example, was one that you recommended me. What was it? 以讀百為死從家.
Yeah, yeah. You seem to be really fond of that.
That was really good. A lot of swear words. I think it said like maybe put like a bleep sign. It said like put guy like every like few
But
sentences.
that's kind of the impression that Hong Kongers have of the Cantonese language also, because uh, it happens a lot. We actually discussed that in our first episode, because lots of people try to differentiate Cantonese from Mandarin or like written Chinese.
Yep.
So one of the ways they do that, and not only the pronunciation and everything, but also by the vocabulary. And somehow lots of people feel that it's necessary to mark the status of Cantonese with swear words. So
I mean there are
yeah,
a lot.
we do use them a lot, but not to the extent that it's like everywhere.
But I mean like it's the
Necessary.
same with English. Like swear words. If you watch English media, I think compared to like Mandarin, for example, there's so many swear words in English media comparatively. So like a West versus East thing, but like the amount of times you hear the F and S word in just anything is ridiculous. They're probably some of the most common words in the language. I'm pretty sure if you did a frequency list, it'd get in the top 100 with some TV shows. You know.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've been watching some Polish Netflix for a while now, and then recently I started a comedy special, and then I was just overwhelmed by the amount of different words that Polish has in for swearing, and I just
Yeah.
kept looking up like the same word with different prefixes and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, is Spanish one of the ones that you've gone through as well?
No, I haven't done Spanish. I mean,
I
I did one
remember
course in university.
I was watching a TV drama, The Papel, which is Money Heist, and
Oh, right.
it was when I hadn't actually like done that much Spanish at the time, so my level was quite bad. But I like to try and watch stuff and see which words jump out at me. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, there's one word. It's like, oh, damn. I was like, it keeps on. I've heard this like every other sentence. What does it mean? I look it up and it says fuck. I'm like, oh, okay. So, it's just like super common in the drama, but yeah.
I mean, it happens. Wait, so is your channel explicit?
No, I'm pretty sure I've
You
sworn
can
it
bleep that
before.
out. Yeah.
It's already gone. I've already sworn in Cantonese now by that point. So,
All right.
but yeah, so that's. But I think so in terms of, because I guess you're probably still more aware of like what of like resources there is for natives in Cantonese than I am probably. Because I mean, I haven't looked for a few years as well. I think maybe 2 years ago I was looking and searching quite a lot. Now I just kind of know what people tell me about.
Mhm.
So like I know for example it's been put into link now. My friend Christian linked me a YouTube channel that has all of their videos with CC subtitles, which in Cantonese, which is really cool. And I know there's like stuff like that floating about. I guess for new books and manga, I think there's a lot of manga, like Japanese manga, gets translated to Cantonese, right, and stuff like that as
Yeah.
well. Like I remember reading some of Gintama, but
Hmm.
that's actually I found super confusing because the like they still do the narration in like standard Chinese, right? And at the time, I'd never spoken Mandarin or
Hmm.
standard Chinese, so I just kind of they're the same with music. I just found the lyrics quite confusing
All
because I
right.
didn't
So
know
you actually
standard
learned
Chinese.
Cantonese all that time without learning standard Chinese. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, right. Because, well, ever since I revived my blog, I made it an Instagram for it, and I started following different kinds of, Cantonese teaching Instagram accounts, and lots of them have like kind of bilingual images where they put the spoken Cantonese here and then standard Chinese here, just for reference. So I thought most people would learn that way, but it would have
Um.
been confusing, I suppose.
Well, I mean, I guess now's a good time to talk about it. I think one of the biggest mistakes I did with Cantonese was not going into standard written Chinese. I think that was a mistake because I okay, so I'm just trying to think of like a good analogy to help people understand this. So if you think of the difference between spoken Cantonese and written Chinese, I always imagine it as if you're comparing, like the Queen's spoken English
Hmm.
versus someone, say, from Newcastle or like
Hmm.
some Scotland or something like that. And what you're imagining is if you get someone from Scotland, from Glasgow, with a heavy accent, speaking quite slangy English, and then you get Queen's English subtitles. So a lot of the colloquial stuff is changing, but I think the more kind of academic and specific the topic gets, the bigger the overlap and vocabulary is going to become,
Yeah.
until eventually they're all basically the same. So if you got someone from Scottish or someone in Queen's English speak about neuroscience, well, all of the neuroscience words are going to be exactly the same. So I think for me, because I was like, no, I only want to read Cantonese, I didn't read a lot of books in Chinese that could have given me vocabulary to talk about things that I liked, like science and stuff in
Hmm.
Cantonese, because the words are the same. And I just avoided that. Whereas if I wanted to
Actually, we
stick
use
to,
English more.
I mean, yeah, that's true. I'm more just talking about from like if you didn't want to code switch,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah. But I don't know if that's, I don't know if that's a good analogy. Like that's kind of like how I understood it in my head, sort of.
yeah. That's a way of putting it because, well, I mean, standard written Chinese in Hong Kong is basically like formal Mandarin pronounced in Cantonese, right? So
Hmm.
it's hard to find a. I would say maybe like Scots and English for the language savvy. Well, in a video on my channel, I said it's like pronouncing French in English.
Oh
So
yeah,
there's
I've seen
different
that.
ways of yeah, trying to comprehend it.
But
But
I guess the thing I wanted to get across was that a lot of the like technical words are the same.
yeah,
Or maybe
yeah,
if you take, for example, Spanish, like a lot of science words like Homo sapiens in Spanish is Homo sapiens or something, and
yeah.
it's the same as having the same characters in
Hmm.
Cantonese and Mandarin. They'd be the same thing, but just pronounced differently.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's something I've been thinking about recently as well because ever since I started writing in Cantonese on my blog, and ever since we started doing the podcast, I tried to sort of limit the code switching to a minimum. So my
Like the English, you mean?
principle, yeah. So my principle would be to use English words that are only use English words that are just everywhere in Cantonese. So we basically adopted it into our language, like check,
Like okay or
yeah, something like that. But otherwise, I would just use the Cantonese equivalent of that. So I started writing a lot of we say it's overlap between Cantonese and Mandarin or standard written Chinese, because I talk about language learning and on the podcast especially about linguistics, which is quite technical. So we just end up trying to translate the glossary of terms all the time from English to Chinese to Cantonese. Yeah.
that's interesting. So is that just when you're writing or on the podcast as well?
Both. Yeah.
Because I remember you guys said, I mean, it's you did say a few English words on the podcast. I think I remember hearing
We
quite a
do.
few.
I actually counted in the first episode. There's around 100 English words in total. So
And
something
that's
like
about 40 minutes long for reference, right? 45 minutes,
yeah.
something like that. Yeah. Okay.
Which is really little for an average Hong Konger, especially one
Considering,
that's
yeah,
educated
like
in university.
most people, they use words like for reference. They use words like friends and lunch and stuff that use English. And like, I mean, I remember when I think my girlfriend went to the school she went to for high school and stuff. They used English to teach a lot of the classes, I think. So I'd
Yeah.
be like, you know, ask her like, oh, what's the Cantonese word for nitrogen? And she just look at me, but like
No,
nitrogen
bro. No
and stuff
idea.
like that. And I
I think we
think
see that in
yeah,
newspapers, but it doesn't show up that much in newspapers, so we just say nitrogen. But things
I
like friends and lunch, that's something I would categorize as an actual loan word in the Cantonese language so much, and the pronunciation is also sort of Cantoified. So we say fan, lunchu. So that's something I would write on my blog.
interesting. It, yeah, it's very interesting, and obviously there's loads that are like Basi, Bossy, Dixie. What's it?
But that's
Sido, Bele.
yeah,
That's like I've actually changed it to like the full-on Cantonese phonology. Like use the full-on
more
Cantonese
deeply
sounds for it.
integrated into language. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
makes sense. That's pretty interesting actually. So I wanted to just switch topic, going back to the podcast.
Hmm.
So you've got you got one episode out now, right? In total?
Two. We just released the second one on Thursday.
Oh
So
wow, you're doing one a week.
we're trying. I mean, we can't promise anything. It's going to be irregular, let's say, because I'm the free as one of the three. My two co-hosts are quite busy with the things. So one is studying, one is working. So we just pump out one whenever we're free.
Yeah,
But
and
I do most of the work, so we're fine as long as we can record.
like the reason why I was quite surprised at one a week because it seems like a lot of work to me is I don't like probably people that have never written a transcript or typed in subtitles for anything probably might not realize how long it actually takes. But if you've
Oh
got
yes.
something that's 45 minutes long and you want to transcribe the whole thing, you're looking at, probably at the very least like 4 hours work. And that's probably, I wouldn't be surprised if it actually took a lot longer than that.
Well,
Like,
I was actually pleasantly surprised how little time it took.
really?
Yeah, well, I type with Chantia, which is quite quick, and I realized that once I slow it down to like 50% speed, I could actually type in at the same time as listening,
Uh,
which
I
is
guess
around
I guess
100 words per minute.
I
Yeah.
guess I'm comparing it with subtitles when you have to like get the bar at the right length as the audio, then you have to
Oh
go
yeah,
to the
yeah.
next bit and do that, and
That's
then go
annoying.
to the next bit and then do that. And also, most of the stuff time I add subtitles, it's when I'm speaking like Chinese, so it's not transcription, it's translation as well.
Yeah.
And like even like little stuff like "gaya wa," I'm like, how do I translate that as a British person without sounding sarcastic? Like, like
I don't think that's the problem with translation. It's more like just Britain in
cultural
general.
difference. It's like, oh, how you can do it. It's like you say it in English, it sounds so sarcastic. I'm like, what?
What's wrong with you guys? Can't you just be positive for once? No.
No.
But yeah, I mean, subtitles are way more annoying to do. Yeah. So what I usually do in videos just add all the boxes first and then type in the words later on.
Oh yeah,
The
because you actually
transcription is
use
much quicker. Yeah.
subtitles for some of your things. That's cool. So Yeah, I guess so. You've got the originally start off with Cantonese conversations, so then you've got your bilingual blog slash podcast as well. That's it, right? Is anything else that we should know about, or
Well, I've got a
because
bunch of
that's already
friends.
a lot already.
Yeah.
Like,
I
yeah,
mean, that's a
sorry.
lot. So I don't do much of anything else now. But I've got quite a few friends who work on various kinds of Cantonese learning related projects like the words.hk and this book Resonate.
It's
That's
okay.
the
Wait,
latest,
Shan.
the
Okay.
first literary magazine in Cantonese.
Oh, cool.
And there is also the Cantonese, it's
Can you
like
open it up?
readers for children. Oh yeah,
So
sure.
what's the
Just
what's
gonna
the
plug that stuff as well.
so what's the magazine about?
It's literature in general, so there's quite a bit of short fiction in there, and
Oh,
then
really?
some some general
That is really
articles,
cool.
yeah, lifestyle and everything.
After this, I will go on the internet and see if I can find that where you buy it from. What's it called? The English name was Resonate, right? And the characters
Resonate,
was
Wei
Mandarin. It
Hang in
was Hui
Cantonese,
Shang. Okay, yeah,
Wei Hang. Yeah,
yeah. Because
I'm not involved in that, but I plug it really hard everywhere on my blog because I love it. I love the concept because it sort of solidifies the status of Cantonese as an independent language that can be written.
yeah, that's and the I think a lot of people like ask me like what the what's the difference between Cantonese and Mandarin, because I think a lot of people outside the outside of the language learning community or outside of Asia probably they probably just think of it more as Chinese. But
Yeah.
even and that's kind of if people aren't interested, then it's going to be you can understand that there's a lot of things to learn. You can't be knowledgeable at everything. That's just impossible. But with people inside the language learning community, you often hear people say things like, I'm trying to think, like, oh, but when I went to Hong Kong, I looked at books and it looked the same as the ones that I saw in Taiwan. They're the same. It's just
Yeah.
Chinese, right? What's the difference? And I'm just like, it is the same, but it's also like you can write it differently, but it's also not really written differently that often, and it's kind of really like it's quite hard to explain. But Israel actually did a video on like what the differences between like Mandarin and Cantonese are, and again, I'll probably link that in the description if anyone's interested.
Right.
It's actually spoken in German with English subtitles, so you know,
Yeah. I don't know why I wanted to do that. I basically just, as I
it's
said in
like
the
making
video,
a lot
I
more
ran
work for
into
yourself.
a German article and I just got so indignated that I decided to make a video about it. And I do go into lots of detail, especially the complications with written Chinese, which is a shared written language across the different Chinese languages. So that it can cause quite a bit of confusion in overseas communities because, people don't understand how it's like to speak one language and write another.
And I guess the thing is that's like the important thing is it would work for something like Chinese and not necessarily English, because like the Chinese is something called logograph, so it's not in terms of like a symbol represents a certain sound. It's this like little block represents a certain meaning, and these blocks put together form words and stuff. So like, and like I said, there's a big overlap in vocabulary in terms of the characters from Mandarin and Cantonese, but probably the way you put it together, the order, the grammar, the word use is all different, and
Hmm.
obviously a lot of vocabulary and certain things does change. So it is quite. It's a if you've never been through the process of learning either Mandarin or Cantonese, it's very hard to explain it to someone. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's really hard to
but
reach so outside the language learning community and explain all these myths and misconceptions. Yeah, and so
so
the one of the main reasons I even got into the Cantonese teaching learning space at all was because I have a thing for like technical accuracy. So I like to correct people a lot, like a douchebag.
just that, like, oh, all that you just said is wrong. Let me
You're
correct you.
wrong about that. Yeah. So when I got into the language learning community, I saw lots of all these myths, or like outside the community as well, especially. So I just wanted to correct everyone about what Cantonese is from a scientific linguistic standpoint,
Mhm.
and uh, and that's how I started working with the people who are pushing Cantonese as its own language, as a writing language to learners, etc.
Okay.
And I just feel like there's so much potential that's wasted when Cantonese is only spoken and not written because there's so many domains in daily life that you can't use it in. So I just wanted to
Yeah.
help them, push it more, get more people to learn it, because lots of people don't learn it because they just don't know about it. So yeah, that's why I wanted to
And
reach
also,
out.
I think stuff like that makes it become a lot more accessible to people to learn. So if anyone's like interested in learning Cantonese, for example, in the UK now would be the best time to learn, really, because there's a lot of political things going on at the moment, and because of that, a lot of Hong Kong people are probably going to be coming to the UK, which means
A lot.
if you live in the UK, there's already a lot of Cantonese in the UK. Like you go to most Chinese restaurants and they don't speak Mandarin, they speak Cantonese. But it's going to be even more so like that probably in a few years.
I mean,
Yeah,
from what I know in the Chinatowns, it's sort of a bit of tug of war between two languages. So
yeah.
new shops and
The
restaurants
newer
open and
ones, yeah,
close.
yeah.
Yeah,
At least in places like Sheffield, but like the first wave of emigration I think came from the south of China when there was a big famine or something, right? So like loads of people came from all different parts of the country. Then there was 1997, I think. So then loads of Hong Kong people
97.
came
Yeah,
to different parts, specifically the UK at the time. So I think for historical reasons, before the year 2000, most of the people that came to the UK from China or Hong Kong were Cantonese speaking, and then after that, more Chinese people started to go and build up, and especially now, if you go to cities, there's a lot of Chinese university students and stuff like that.
yeah. So in Hong Kong, there's lots of people, especially like in the middle classes or so, they don't
Mhm.
see Hong Kong as like the roots or like the permanent home. So they are quite open to just moving abroad or getting foreign citizenship as soon as they can. So every time in history, whenever there was a crisis, people would move out to other countries, and then when things are better in Hong Kong, they would move back and so on. So now it's like the second or third wave that's about to happen. So
I mean, the
yeah,
second or third wave of
of
immigration.
immigration, not of something else.
That's what I was just
That's
like.
already happening, not about to happen.
I was gonna say that we're all screwed already. So. Cool. Yeah, I guess I've got a few. I've got a few just random questions about Cantonese that I'm always curious to ask people. So, how how do you type? So, but before you said like there's a lot of things that help, um, people learning Cantonese and all these things, and it's helping good for the movement. One thing that I found very useful was texting people in Cantonese. I think that's like a really nice, low pressure, like fun way to practice with people. So if you're on your phone and you were going to type in Chinese or Cantonese, how would you type? Because yeah, how would you type?
Yeah, I still use Changjie, which is
Okay,
a sort of
that's really confusing.
yeah, it's a shape-based way of typing Chinese
It's based
characters.
off like the.
The,
So I think that's on this like using the fact that Chinese characters are basically built off smaller Chinese characters, which are built off smaller ones, and then it's these radicals that are like the building blocks for all of them, and it's kind of like which of these smaller characters make up bigger characters, so it would be this plus this plus this equals this character. That's kind of how it works, right? Or not?
yeah, kind of like that. That's the way of putting it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of like radicals, but not exactly radicals. Just different fragments of each character.
Yeah, and I think because it like breaks it down more than what my brain is used to. So like,
Yeah.
if I see a character, like I mean I'll give a simple example, like the one for like 明白跟明
Hmm.
明白的那个明
Hmm.
I think okay, it's what sun and moon. Probably in kanji, that's also sun and moon because that's quite a simple one.
Yeah.
But you take like a more complicated one, like Hong Kong.
Hmm.
Hong Kong,
Yeah.
and it's just got. I'm trying to think. It's got like a day in there, and I kind of know what it can draw it out with my finger. And I'm trying to think, what's it like? Maybe like a roof, and
And you
then
have to find the right place
like a,
to sort
like
of slash it.
like a tree and something. And I'm just kind of think like you know but I think the kanji method kind of breaks it down to really the really raw, simplest form. So my brain might break it down to there, and then you have to go to like here before you can use the kanji input. And for me, I'm sure I could learn it.
I feel like you
Yeah.
already know lots more than just plenty of Hong Kongers do, because most people would use the what's that Chok saying, the quick one, which is like
Mhm.
Changjie but simplified and less fast.
Yeah, and
And
is that the
then
one that's like Cheng Su, the characters, right? Something like
Su
that.
Cheng
Oh, Su
in
Cheng.
Mandarin.
Okay.
Yeah, you got it
Yeah.
that way. Yeah, and then there's
I
plenty of people
used to
who
do that, like
type with
flips the front.
just sort of ad hoc romanization because
Yeah.
standardized romanization isn't that popular in Hong Kong. So people just type with whatever way of writing in English that they can. My friends use Yuping a lot,
Oh,
and
cool.
the weirdest way of typing is to use Mandarin Pinyin to type Cantonese.
People from Guangdong do that, and
Oh, not only
because
that,
of
I mean, yeah.
sorry, and because I've actually seen Hong Kongers do the same thing, but I guess because a lot of the Cantonese only characters. So for people that are listening, there is a big overlap in character use for Cantonese and Mandarin, like 90 something percent. But I think there's maybe somewhere roughly ish 200 characters that only exist in Cantonese, and you can't type them using pinyin. So people in like Guangdong or whatever, they'd be like O, and like if they wanted to type Lidi,
Ah,
that'd be like O, and then like de or something. Or like if they wanted to do or day, the day, because they got day, they'd have like an O or like an
and then
something like
yeah.
that, and then like the Mandarin character, and it's just like, or sometimes Lidi they'd use a capital D. I see a lot of people do that.
Hmm.
You know?
Well, surprisingly, quite a lot of Pinyin input methods do support those Cantonese characters,
Oh,
and they
actually,
have
I
just a
guess yeah.
really weird pronunciation that what nobody uses because it's not in Mandarin. But the people who type that way would just somehow figure it out and then just use it on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So I just keep wanting to ask them, can you actually speak Cantonese in Mandarin? Which is like the opposite of reading standard Chinese in Hong Kong, right? Yeah.
Oh, you mean if you've got a text in Cantonese, can you read it in Mandarin?
Yeah, because that's how they type.
Uh,
They
mm,
type each character using Mandarin pronunciation. But it's surprisingly common in Hong Kong, especially in the younger generation, which is more influenced by, culture from mainland or Taiwan.
yeah, that sounds quite confusing actually.
To
But
me, yes.
I know some characters that I originally thought only existed in Cantonese, like I don't know, like sick Goligos. The one that's
Uh-huh.
like bat, but like the more like spoken version of it. I originally thought that wasn't in Mandarin, and then you also later I see people that when they're like and stuff, you kind of use it as like sound effects a lot.
Ah, that.
And like I was like seeing it in books, and I'm there like, what's this doing here? Isn't that Cantonese? like, and I was learning for like I think maybe like over a year, probably more before I even came into the character once. So I think it is quite rare, but I was just like, why is that doing here? And even some like words like like jungum jungi, like to like
Hmm.
jungi.
Hmm.
I actually seen like the character in Mandarin, like zhong yi, and I was like,
Hmm.
that's a thing. Like I thought that was just a Cantonese word, and I didn't know actually they do have that word in Mandarin. It's just super rare.
Yeah,
So I think
yeah.
what I've noticed is, I think a lot of the really formal words in Mandarin, or like older words, or that aren't used as much now,
Hmm.
that actually are used quite a lot in Cantonese now. So like for example, the use of I was reading the Diary of a Madman. Do you know that book? Kwangren, Reji.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And he
Awesome
kept on
stuff.
using the character like Pong instead of like what instead of like the other ones that we use for ands now in modern Cantonese. But I was just like, oh well, yeah, I know what that means. It's kind of the same uses in Cantonese. So I guess like looking at things like that, you can kind of like see that Cantonese is like, kind of like closer to older Chinese. I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of what lots of people kind of know about, and they use that to claim that Cantonese is like
Number
the
one,
more original or like the truer kind of Chinese. But the
it's the
fact is,
rightful heir to the Chinese throne. Yeah.
yeah, we do discuss that in the first episode of the podcast. This is just kind of arbitrary because there's different ways of saying certain things in older Chinese varieties, and then as the languages evolve, they just kind of picked one and stuck with it.
Mhm.
But the other one just kind of exists in the background, and you could use it, but nobody would. So yeah, but and then just kind of just happen to pick some of the words that are more present in older Chinese. But yeah, just lots of Hong Kong people just don't think about these language issues that much, and that's also one of the reasons I wanted to do the podcast, because sometime before I left Hong Kong, possibly for good, I met with a friend of mine who was doing a show for the local radio, official radio, and he was telling me how there's lots of challenges when he wanted to do more innovative or creative ways of presenting content in shows, because there's sort of set or conventional ways of doing things, very fixed perspectives of looking at the topics, and it felt very constrained when he was doing the show. And then I kept thinking when I was on the flight, how there's lots of people on YouTube in Hong Kong talking about lifestyle and politics, especially. So you could call that a podcast. But not many people talk about sort of relatively academic things like languages. So I want to fill that gap with our show and just inform more people of certain things that are very present in our daily life, but just nobody thinks about them that much. Like the relationship between Cantonese and ancient Chinese and so on.
It's something for me that I'm like very interested in now. I mean, it's something that I'm personally quite interested in. So I'm going to probably go check out episode 2 at some point today or tomorrow. Because I've started getting more into. Maybe you can appreciate this as a language learner. Like when I first start learning off, I kind of say, "Oh, I want to learn to this level," and then I'm okay with that. That's fine. But with Chinese in general now, the more I learn, I find more cool stuff that I want to know about.
Yeah.
So now my teacher was just like, because I was saying I wanted to get more into like ancient Chinese, and I'm just like get more into these like history dramas and like history books and stuff. And then she's just like, "What do you want to learn? What do you want to read in that?" And I'm just like, I don't know, Lao Tzu Zhuangzi I don't know, like Sayogei or whatever. I'm just like, there's so much stuff that's cool that I want to read or like
Really
get
intense.
more about. And it's just I'm just like, it's gonna take a fucking long time.
So which pronunciation would you be using to read those ancient texts? Go Old Chinese, definitely.
Mandarin probably, because my Mandarin's a lot better than my Cantonese at the moment.
That's a shame. What have you done, Luke?
I know. I need to. I need to
go get your shit together.
I need the Hogs app.
No, I'm just kidding.
I do definitely want to go back to Cantonese, and there's been a few. I've been like creating a list of like things that I want to watch and go back, like things that I want to go through when I go back to Cantonese, and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So I'm just like, I'm not going to be short of content when I go back, and that's the really cool thing. So I remember when I, sorry.
So just keep hoarding content.
Keep hoarding content, yeah. Because I think one of the, I got the feeling when I quit Cantonese, not quit, changed my focus to like Spanish and then Mandarin. I got the feeling that because I had about 6 or 7 books saved on my Google Drive, and I was like, okay, I've read like 5 of them. So I kind of got the feeling that if I keep going, I'm going to run out of stuff soon. And now, I've just seen like other stuff like Dick Lady. There was Dick Lady, Hong Dick Dixie, and like there's that other book about people that go to Korea. There's Dick Gong Lui Lo Po, and like there's I think there's just these movies and stuff coming out, and there's like YouTube channels that are coming out with Cantonese subs that are in the CC, and there's podcasts that you're putting out. I'm just like, okay, I'm not going to run out of stuff. So like now I know there's like this whole like wealth of stuff you can go through. Maybe not not compared to like something like English, but there's like a decent amount now.
I'm just really glad it's sort of picking up pace. So that lots of new stuff is coming out, and people are more aware of the fact that Cantonese can be written in a formal situation and so on. But yeah, I know as a quote unquote polyglot or like a language lover, we just have a smorgasbord of different content in each language to go through, so it can happen. Smorgasbord. I gotta stick to my Swedish.
I had a like a reading list of like books that I want to read in Mandarin, and it started off quite small. I think there's like 9 pages long. There's like well over 100 books in it. I'm just like, I should probably stop adding some. Oh look, this looks so cool. I just stop. But it's at least like I'm hoarding like links to things and not actually just going out and buying loads of stuff,
Yeah.
But, like there's a lot of interesting stuff, and I feel like you can probably understand. It's like when you just get to the level when you're like, okay, I can understand a lot of most things, like to give it a good go. Whereas before, like, so you feel like you've actually got access to all of this cool stuff that you didn't do before, but there's still so many words I don't know in them, so there's still so much to learn from going through it, and then that gets like really exciting, and you just want to like look at everything and don't have time, and then problems.
What is time even?
Yeah.
Don't know. The days just go by, and then I do a bit of that. Don't even get to do proper learning.
So that was a very interesting talk. We talked a lot about kind of Cantonese versus Mandarin. I didn't actually initially intend to go into that much detail, but I think that was really interesting. So I'm hoping other people find that. So
and I love how we have different perspectives on things. Outsider who learned Cantonese and Mandarin, and me as like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Oh, well, a native speaker, I guess. Yeah. So.
But like once I started learning Taiwanese, I also kind of got the outsider perspective as well, because now that's one of the Sinitic languages, but that's also completely new to me. So I start to be able to appreciate how it's like to learn a language like Cantonese.
I think Taiwanese would be harder, and I just going off purely the amount of resources available. I think there's a lot more for Cantonese than there is Taiwanese.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong, but the only book I know in Taiwanese is The Little Prince. And I think writing it down, I see them mix in some kind of like Latin letters with characters and stuff, I think, right? And it looks kind of quite confusing. I don't know.
Because it doesn't have the long tradition of writing the spoken language with characters. In Hong Kong, there is for like the past century or so. So it's been written in like newspapers and stuff.
So written Cantonese was started about like, a century ago. Because I know...
Don't take my word for it. I'm not a professional, but
what's it called? You know that like Bakhua, where you can write it down as it's spoken, like that. A Diary of a Madman was the first one that was in the first book that was in Bakhua. That must have been like what 120, 130 years ago. So that's not that long ago for Mandarin.
That was when people were all writing classical Chinese.
Yeah,
so Bakhua is just spoken language in general. So this guy would write his language, and then the other guy would write his spoken language.
But like the way he writes it is similar to like Mandarin today, right? So to think that the first book for like what's it called vernacular Chinese is the English word, I think, probably. it's the first book was written in vernacular Chinese in like the 1910s or the 1920s, probably like like the.
Well, I mean,
Cantonese to have 100 years is like quite a really long period. It's almost the same length as Mandarin.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, that was when people were transitioning from classical Chinese to vernacular Chinese. So in Hong Kong or in southern China, people were starting to invent new characters for the Cantonese words,
cool.
And that's why we have the Cantonese like exclusive characters. But technically speaking, vernacular Chinese writing in like fiction and stuff started way earlier before that. That's for example, when I was in primary school, I read The Romance of Three Kingdoms. That's technically in vernacular Chinese, but of that time, so it's earlier. So it's closer to classical Chinese, but it's not the same.
I've heard that's really difficult just because of, I guess, hit all the historical references and stuff and military strategy and things. I imagine that's really hard.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And the fact that it's like 1,000 pages or something.
I loved history and all that when I was a kid, so I really enjoyed reading it.
I'm watching a TV drama called Chu Han Chuanqi, which is set, in that time period when it's after the Qin Dynasty. I find it. I only realized the other day that the China in the name in English China comes from the Qin Dynasty, like China, China. I was like, oh, that's really cool.
Does it?
Apparently it does. Apparently it does. Yeah.
Is it real? Is it folk etymology? I can't tell.
That's what some dude said in a video on YouTube. Anyway,
don't take their words for it. Don't take mine either. I don't know anything about actual etymology.
Yeah, but I was gonna say because I had an idea that was like if I watch historical dramas like in chronological order, maybe after the Chu Han contention, maybe the next one would be the Three Kingdoms period and like the remnants of the Three Kingdoms, like that sort of thing. So I could go watch a drama based off that next. So I might go watch that.
I saw your tweet about it. That's a really creative idea. Yeah. There's so many historical and political dramas, I think, especially compared to the Western world. And they're also clearly laid out in the time period.
I am going to read about it at some point. I bought some books for kids to do with history, and I was going to read about it at some point. But just for like while I'm reading other stuff now, it might be a bit of a way to like prime the brain to like pick up these things and at least get some of the words like known and kind of get
Hmm.
like a rough idea of it before you kind of like, go back in detail. But shoot, what was I gonna say? Oh, yeah, so I was speaking how you typed in Cantonese, and you asked me like, if I was to read this, would I read it in Cantonese or Mandarin? So if you I'm assuming because you're a Cantonese native speaker, when you read a novel in standard Chinese or something like that, it's pretty much all using Cantonese to
Oh
like
yeah,
if you
yeah,
do any sub-vocalization. If you were to, and obviously you're fully fluent in Mandarin, if you were to do that in
kind of.
Mandarin, can
Hmm.
you like can you force yourself to do it? Is
Oh,
it really
actually,
weird?
I've been sort of shifting that way because well, the people around me or like my little bubble has been shifting towards writing Cantonese in like online
Mhm.
posts and text and stuff, and I've been reading so much Cantonese and so little Mandarin that when I read standard Chinese now, my brain starts to go into Mandarin mode as well. So there's more separation between the two. But when I was younger, I would always read standard Chinese and Cantonese, and also classical Chinese as well.
Yeah. I think my original thinking was that if I learn Mandarin, this is before I started, I was like, if I learn Mandarin, I can focus on mainland China Mandarin, and then
Hmm.
I can associate the traditional with Cantonese and then simplify with Mandarin, which would have made perfect sense. But then I went to Taiwan, so I kind of went out. I was like, yeah, but I like Taiwan. It's a pretty cool place, so let's just
And
go
then
there
there's
instead.
Guangdong as well.
Oh yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, simplified.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, yeah. I was texting Cantonese with all my friends from Guangdong the other day, actually, because I was trying to get on the website. Himalaya? Was it Himalaya?
No,
With
not really.
it's an ebook website for mainland China, and I was like, you need a Chinese phone number, so I was like, can I use your phone number, please? And they were like, yeah, okay. So I was getting set up on
Ah,
that. But yeah, I have actually, yeah, I find texting people in simplified Cantonese kind of hurts my brain a little bit. I
oh,
find
mine
it
too.
hard to process.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because recently, as I started to be more interested in like Cantonese as a whole or like Yue language, I started looking into like different dialects of Cantonese, such as the one that my grandma spoke. So I started watching videos from mainland China about those dialects, and I just get mind blown because I can't read the subtitles that well. I have to sort of process it a bit to convert it into traditional.
Oh right, yeah. Because it's do you, is it just simplified characters in general? You're not as good as it? Because I
I
think
mean, yeah, in general, but also especially Cantonese written in simplified characters.
oh yeah, because
It's
that's like
super weird
even more
sometimes.
rare. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I guess if you struggle, then I shouldn't be so hard on myself. But I'm like, why is this so hard? But even like I also went on Hello Talk a lot recently to just
Hmm.
practice like texting with people in simplified Chinese because I'm if I'm gonna read something and go out to read a book, I'm gonna do it in traditional because I find it way more comfortable and I think the characters look cooler and stuff. But I was like, oh, I'll just dabble a little bit in simplified and like sometimes you're texting, I'm just like even like some of the most common characters, I'm like, how is that? Like you look at the one for like dragon, I'm like, what the hell is this thing?
Oh, yeah. But
I was just
that's
like,
kind of like the cursive writing, right? For
uh,
the weirdest one, that came from cursive Chinese. So
really?
it actually made sense back then. But to me, the one thing I hate about simplified Chinese characters now is how it's so heavily anchored in Mandarin. So lots of characters just don't make sense. The simplification doesn't work in Cantonese.
Yeah, and I think you get like sometimes you get like two characters simplified to the same one character, and I'm just like reading it. I think in traditional it's more clear which one it is, whereas you have to like one character has more possible meanings in simplified, I think, because
Mhm.
sometimes it gets simplified to the same one, right?
Yeah, but I
It's
guess that
confusing as well.
sort of, I mean, it's kind of a bit going towards like the non-Chinese way of writing things. So in English you write the sound instead of the
Mm.
meanings, right? So that's kind of what they were trying to achieve that. So when you see the word, you just say the sound in your head, and then you're supposed to know what it means.
But
Of
sometimes
course,
the
it's
sound
harder
of
in
the
Chinese because
character
of the home.
changes as
Yeah.
well, because it's like if you take like, the example hui, or then you go kuai ji, or like shuo, shui fu, shui
Oh
fu.
yeah.
A lot of the
Oh
time it like changes as well, so it's like
yeah. Oh, it's even worse in Taiwanese. I don't know if you know about it, but in Taiwanese there's just uh, different what are, just lots of reading for the same characters because, well, historically speaking, they deviated from like mainland, no, like the most of the other Chinese languages pretty early on, but then they kept having interactions with the other Chinese languages, and then they just kind of developed new readings for the same character. So nowadays, the same character for different meanings would have different readings. So like for example,
Kind of like
the
Japanese, I
word
guess,
for
as well.
yeah, it's kind of like that. But Japanese also has the original, kunyomi.
Look, that's also kind of more extreme as well, probably.
Yeah, so it's kind of doing the same thing as that.
Actually,
But yeah, but in Japanese, the different readings depend on the way it's used, right? So in like a complete Chinese vocabulary, it would be the onyomi, and then in like native Japanese verb, that would be kunyomi. Whereas in
so
Taiwanese, it
just
depends on
just
the
to explain
meaning.
quickly, the difference between
Oh,
the
yeah, sorry
onyami and
about
the
that.
kunyami. So onyami is, I think, onyami is the one that's from Chinese, and
From
kunyami is the original
Chinese.
Japanese reading.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
So
yeah.
so in kunyami just means there is originally a Japanese word, and then they just took a Chinese character with the same meaning, but no relation at all to write this word.
But that's
And
really interesting that you said that about Taiwanese, because I just realized, like, I was thinking about it, a lot of the ones that change the pronunciation of the character in Mandarin, they do it for the Taiwanese version of Mandarin only, and not the standard Mandarin in like mainland China.
okay,
So like, I think a lot of people they would say like shuofu instead of
really?
shuifu Mandarin. Maybe that's an incorrect example, but I think I remember hearing a lot of Mandarin from mainland China when they say like kuai ji shi, they wouldn't say kuai. I think they still pronounce it hui. Maybe
Okay.
I've heard stuff like that, so I'm
Oh,
wondering if that's just been massively influenced by Taiwanese, which is why there's so many things. I,
well,
I, I'm
funny
sure someone will tell
story.
me I'm wrong in the
The
comment section.
the Taiwanese pronunciation for short is sui. So
Oh, really?
might have something to do with that. Yeah. So that's, for example, to explain the gai sui.
I'm just googling. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, but
But
I think there seem to be more changes in pronunciation of characters in Taiwanese Mandarin compared to that.
Interesting.
But
But I mean, as we said, there's lots of just mixing between Taiwanese Hokkien and Taiwanese Mandarin. But Taiwanese Hokkien just does many of the same things that Japanese does with the different readings. So it does have different uh, so pronunciations of the same character from different time periods. And also there is actually kunyomi in Taiwanese. So they would take a character from Mandarin and then put it to a complete different character for Taiwanese. I don't know if that is somehow related to the historical ties between the two countries.
I have no idea.
Maybe. Yeah, but it's just so interesting because I have learned Japanese before, and then lots of pronunciations are so alike, even more so than with Cantonese. So
Mm.
sometimes I get confused as well. When I try to speak Japanese now, my head's all Taiwanese.
Yeah, I can imagine. 'Cause it's probably that must be really confusing. Yeah.
Yeah, it happens. It's just polyglot in
So
general.
how long have you been learning Taiwanese Hokkien for? And I'm
Yeah.
assuming you
Oh,
said Taiwanese is Hokkien, right?
well, I mean, Taiwanese is the name of a dialect of Hokkien.
Yeah.
So there's Hokkien all over Southeast Asia. So Taiwan, Malaysia, Singapore, and
So
yesterday I met a person from Indonesia who speaks that.
uh-huh. So
And
when people normally say Taiwanese, I think the one that they say like 70% of Taiwan speaks Taiwanese, that's referring to Taiwanese Hokkien, correct?
yes, yes,
Okay, yeah.
yes. So that,
Yeah.
Taiwanese as its own word can refer to Taiwanese Hokkien.
How
So
long
I've
have you
been
been
learning
learning that for?
on and off since I got into Oxford because I kind of had a lot of free time commuting to my apartment. So I started looking on Glossica, which was just being revamped, the new online version back then, and it was free. So I was like, oh, I'm going to try that. It's a bit of a new challenge because I haven't learned any languages other than my two native ones.
So how far did you how far how hard did you find that? Because I'm curious from the point of someone who already knows like Mandarin and Cantonese. I can imagine like I listen to Taiwanese and I can figure out like some cognates like like the one for like goodbye. I swear
Mm-hmm.
I've heard people say like in Mandarin it's Zai Jin and in what Cantonese is like Soy Gin. I swear it's something like
Zaijian.
it's like
Zaijian.
it sounds like half of one, half of the other.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, like
So that's how it feels like to me as well. Yeah.
yes, I'm sure you like see a lot of like things like that, which is quite cool.
But yeah, so the vocabulary is really easy, and the pronunciations of the vocabulary is also quite close to Cantonese, especially since it retains so many, relatively old phonetic features. But
So
the
there's a
hardest
lot
part is,
more of like
Mhm.
the what they call glottal stops. I think
Oh yes,
in like it's when you like shut off your throat to make like the or like the more like harsh sounds. So like
that's how you say better.
yeah. So like
Yeah.
in Mandarin they don't have many there. Like there's not many consonants on the end of stuff, but in Cantonese it's all like guo or like there's like the k on the end of it, whereas in Mandarin it'd be like guo and it's like more like vowely on the end.
Well, you talk about check tones in general. So Cantonese uh, characters or words can end with so different kinds of stops. So like g, t, b. But we don't have the actual glottal stop where we shut off here. We shut it off
Okay.
inside the mouth. Whereas in Taiwanese Hokkien, you have those check tones as well as the glottal stop.
Okay, so it's like even more
Yeah.
so.
So yeah, it got even more of that.
So,
So it's kind of different correspondences, I suppose.
so
Which is
did you have a
really
conversation in like a basic conversation in Taiwanese, do you think?
sorry.
Do you think you could have a basic conversation in
Yeah,
Taiwanese?
yeah. I think I can. I mean, say most daily things. I just need more
Wait,
vocabulary.
Li Ho? Li Ho? How do you say hello?
Li he.
Or Li He?
Hmm.
It's close enough.
It must be really confusing for you. I know.
Probably here. But I don't
Yeah.
know any Taiwanese. It's just I've just heard like people say it every now and again, like when I was in.
Any swears?
Um, yes, but
Probably.
I forgot. I I learned more Japanese swear words in Taiwan than anything else because
What?
my classmates, a lot of them were Japanese. I spent a lot of time. I just like hear them like like hanging out after class, and then they'd just be talking, and one of them like push the other one's head and be like "Sine" or something, just like push the head up, but like okay, it means like drop dead or something. I'm just like okay, what? And then I'd be like, what does that mean?
No, that I think
So,
I think you're saying Sine, that just means die.
yeah, that's like go
Yeah. So
die.
that's
Yeah.
that's hardly a swear word. I don't know. Japanese just has a very different conception of rudeness to anyone
But
else. They just don't
when
need swear words. They can just
uh,
offend you with
when I
impolite
asked
language.
them like what was the swear word, because they kind of didn't, they were kind of like and then kind of said stuff like that, or they might be like a lot of some people say "kuso" as like a swear word. I'm like that's not a swear word. Is I hear it like all the, is it? Don't think so.
Forgot what that
That's
means.
what
That shows a lot in anime, I think.
it's like damn or something, isn't it? Like blast or something.
I suppose. Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway,
But like Taiwanese words are just so common in Taiwanese Mandarin. They just have Mandarin writings of those words and they just say that all the time. It's really weird.
but yeah, I mean you're right. I do get confused with it quite easily. Like I don't know if you've ever actually heard me speak Mandarin, but like I've
In your
got
videos, yeah.
you can probably hear a lot of things from Cantonese carrying over. Like I always say "shi hao," and like teachers like "shi ho," "shi ho," whoops, and stuff like
Oh,
that. Or
so you
like,
just sound like my dad then.
oh, is that like where your dad speaks
Yeah,
Mandarin?
that's kind of like people from that generation who didn't actually study Mandarin in school.
Or
That's how they speak
or like
Mandarin.
Yao and Yo, I miss up a lot, or mess up a lot, or like what was the other one? Like Go Tongue, I used to say Gao Tongue a lot, so I got the G part changed over, but I'm still making the cow
Ah,
sound. Even actually the other day, I said like Da Guy, but I said Da Kai. I'm like, wait, I'm pretty sure that's like died
yeah,
coat.
yeah.
It's like not carrying over the K for some reason or whatever. There's a lot of stuff like that. Yeah,
I don't know. No, normally those sounds would correspond, but sometimes they just somehow don't correspond, and you just have to change the g to a k.
I think it's just a lot of like practicing speaking early on with very little exposure, and then speaking a lot. So I got a lot of bad habits. So I
Right.
think now I'm back in the UK, it's probably going to be easier for me to kind of like get rid of them.
Yeah, so you can really focus on it.
But anyway, it's
The
interesting
hardest part of
stuff.
Taiwanese is still the tones. I don't know if
How
you've heard
many are
about it,
there?
but
Like eight,
it's just
maybe?
sorry.
How many are
It's
there?
not about the
Eight.
number. Number is fine. I mean, we could manage 6 or 9 tones. We can manage 8 tones, but the tone system is just completely insane. Basically, uh, every character almost changes its tone completely to another one inside a sentence. So,
What?
yeah. In a normal sentence, every character but the last one changes the tone.
Well,
And
I'm a bit
then,
confused as to what you even mean by that. I didn't really understand.
for example, okay, so a word that I used earlier to explain, that's 该水. but the original tone of guy is guy. The guy becomes guy when you put a word, character behind it. So guy sui. And then if you want to say explain something, or explain this, you would say guy sui instead of guy sui. So when you keep appending things to it, you keep changing the tones.
So it's kind of like when it goes from a one character to a two character word, the tone changes, or
Yeah.
okay, because you get some of that in Cantonese, I think, but like not as much. Like
No,
I think what is it like? Is it like nan, and then it's like nan
no,
nan? Like if
don't
you
have
add
that.
if you add a second character and it changes the pronunciation of the first character, I think like what was it like nan yan or something or like nan
Oh,
pan or
okay.
something? Does it change? I can't remember.
Lan Panga. Yeah, Cantonese has a completely different sort of tone changing system.
I was gonna say there are
Usually,
some
it's
of
the
that in
last
Cantonese
character
as
that
well.
changes in
Okay.
Cantonese. Yeah, so it would change everything to the second tone. Uh, let's
Interesting.
say tall high, that's slippers.
I think in standard Mandarin, it's probably easier with that respect because a lot of the ones that change the tone, they just drop the tone in the second one. It just becomes kind of neutral, and
Oh
that's like
yeah,
the
yeah,
that, that's like the case with like 90% of the stuff. Just like, oh, just don't say the second tone. That's fine. You don't need to. You already know what you're talking about.
that's same tone. Yeah, that also happens in Taiwanese. So it's like everything at once in Taiwanese. But
It sounds pretty
in
confusing.
Mandarin, you have the thing where word two third tones would change the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know that well anymore. And nowadays, whenever I speak Mandarin, all the Taiwanese tone changes just pop up in my head. So I guess I'm becoming more
So
Taiwanese.
you're like mixing up like the like Mandarin and Taiwanese quite a lot.
Yeah,
Kind of like the
like a
same way I'd
native.
mix up, kind of like the same way I'd mix up Cantonese and Mandarin. Because I don't know if you've always found this, like in my head, it's kind of like your mother tongue, and then like your foreign language is just all in like some messy ball. So
I
this I kind of
know.
actually I did mess up English for a while, like only little things, but I sometimes did say like get influence from other languages, but it's very rare. And then everything else just kind of like mixes together.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we say protect our mother tongue, right? Because the mother tongue has a special position or like storage in your brain. But I do try to separate the foreign languages sometimes, but it's just so hard, especially when I'm not at like a C level yet.
Yeah. I did. Sometimes I remember. I mean, people might find this quite funny if they're actually still watching it to this point. But when I was learning Mandarin, a really common filler word that people use is "nigger," as in like "nigger dongxi." It means that one,
Oh,
nigger.
you're demonetized.
And in English, it sounds very racist if you kind
Yeah.
of think that sound, and you know, it sounds like a different word in English that's got all this history behind it. But in Chinese, it means that one. And when I was speaking to my housemate in Taiwan, she's from Canada, and I was just speaking to my Taiwanese friends, and I come in, and I was just thinking, and I was just like, oh, Nick, and she was just like looking at me like, don't do that when you go back to the UK. I'm like, oh shit. Like, imagine if
What?
you're just like, because I was speaking English at the time, and when I was thinking, I used
Oh,
that as a filler word, and I'm just like,
okay.
I should not because if I'm speaking English with someone in England and I use nigger as a filler word, they think
Yeah,
I'm using the one that's from
yeah,
English, not the one from Chinese, and they'd get very offended. So I'm like, yeah, that's
no,
really
definitely.
dangerous. I need to be careful about that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Especially as a non-native Mandarin speaker.
yeah,
I know. I mean, for me, at this point, English is kind of like a native tongue to me because I
yeah.
use it in all domains of daily life. But I still sometimes insert sort of Cantonese filler words in there. Like uh, when misspeak, I would just go my.
Mm.
Yeah. So that's kind of force a habit, and
Or like
just
yeah,
can't
when I was
get
in
rid of.
Taiwan and I was speaking to my friends, like I'll be like, could perfectly hold a conversation with them, and then say some, could they go to like walk off, like, oh wait, I'm like, wait, 等一下. And just like
It's too late.
you just say like
Yeah.
wait as like a reflex because that's like built into your like
Yeah.
it's like built into your reflex. Or like if something goes wrong, I'm just like oh fuck, you know, I'm not like gan or whatever. I was like cow. It's just like you know you like
Hmm.
there's more emotion and stuff built into it when you say it in your mother tongue, and it's kind of just like there more. And you're,
Yeah. I know. It's more connected, to your heart, as people say.
yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Cool. So I guess for you, it wasn't like you've mentioned loads of things about how hard it was, but you've had a lot of help from Mandarin and Cantonese. I'm just wondering if you were to like pretend hypothetically you were an English speaker who knew no Mandarin, who knew no Cantonese, and knew no Chinese characters. What do you think it would be like to learn Taiwanese? Do you think it would be hard?
Is there anyone who learns Taiwanese without Mandarin? Uh,
I think
I
that
don't
there's
know.
probably someone's probably done it.
I think the greatest problem would not be with the language itself, but with the resources available.
Yeah, that's what I
Um,
can imagine because there's not a
yeah, yeah.
lot. Right?
I do know that there are sort of Taiwanese Hokkien textbooks for Japanese speakers because a friend of mine's using those.
That's
Uh,
interesting. So you first
yeah.
have to learn Japanese or Mandarin. You have to pick, or maybe
There's
Cantonese.
got to be something, right? I know that there's recently a new YouTube series. I mean, a series on YouTube called Ingdai Express, which is
Mhm.
uh, a Taiwanese guy and an American guy just talking, translating news articles between Taiwanese and English,
Yeah.
which is really good because it's trying really hard to remove the intermediate of of Mandarin,
Mhm.
so people can go directly from English to Taiwanese and vice versa.
Yeah, because I know like Gloucester's done some stuff with it, like you said, and I think there's been like one other thing that was like made like dialogues for beginners and kind of gave it with English translations and stuff for beginners as well. But I think that the resources are generally really few. Like I remember two of my Japanese classmates, they went to like Taiwanese class, I think like once or twice a week, and even like the textbooks they gave you, this was in Taiwan, bearing in mind, didn't have any audio, and the teacher literally just like recorded like MP3 to give to
Hmm.
them because it came with no audio, and it's like
Hmm.
I'd imagine either you'd have to find friends that can help you and ask a lot of favors, or you'd have to spend a lot of money going to things like Fiverr and things that kind of like make resources for it.
Yeah,
Probably.
someone should do it, but I mean, Taiwanese is in a more precarious situation than Cantonese. It's sort of in the preservation or conservation mode compared to Cantonese, which is thriving in Hong Kong. So what they need to
But
do
it's
is
not just
really,
Hong Kong, I guess. Like even when I went to Guangdong, most people spoke it there. Like I heard it more
yeah.
than Mandarin, even in that. And that people say like when because going back to China now, Cantonese is going to disappear. When I went to like I was in Guangzhou, and I heard it. I didn't speak Mandarin at all. I survived a week, speaking Cantonese with people. Like
Cool,
I think
cool.
once I came into a security guard that was asking me questions and I couldn't understand, and the woman behind me in the queue helped me translate from Cantonese to Mandarin so I could communicate with the guy. And that only happened like once a week, and that was in like China.
I think Cantonese is in like sort of unstable equilibrium kind of thing in
Mm.
scientific terms because it's quite healthy in the sense that lots of parents are speaking to their children, but it's also threatened in the sense that the government is actively trying to suppress it.
Yeah,
So
it's under a lot
now
of
it's
pressure.
fine, but in the long term, it still needs work.
Yeah,
Whereas Taiwanese is at a point where parents aren't speaking it to their kids. So what they are trying to do is to encourage people to speak it more in at home
mm.
or at schools before actually trying to make resources for foreigners to learn it.
Yeah. I remember I watched a video by there's a YouTuber called TK Stories, a Taiwanese guy, and he just does loads of like videos about Taiwan, Taiwanese life, culture, and different things. He did one. He did street interviews in Taipei, and I think he also did one further down south, and he was just asking random people on the street, how good is your Taiwanese? Can you understand the sentence and answer a question, or can you like read this characters in Taiwanese? And like a lot of specifically in Taipei, a lot of people really struggled.
Hmm.
But when I
Yeah,
went down to the south of Taiwan, I think people scored a lot better.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's relatively healthy in South Taiwan. So
Yeah.
I recently discovered I don't know is it a personality or just a YouTuber? It's called uh, Thailand Moya, which is just been a little girl from Thailand. And I mean, not little girl. What's the right translation for it? A chick. It means a chick from Tainan, South Taiwan, teaching you Taiwanese, and uh,
Is
and
it
it
is it like the equivalent of calling
shows,
someone like Xiaomei or something, or like
yeah,
Xiaomei
something
or
like that.
something like
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Lang Moi in Cantonese.
Because like you
Uh,
wouldn't really say that in English. It's just like a generic. It's just like a generic term you'd use to address a young girl.
Yeah, there's so many nuances that you can't directly translate it. But from her
I know.
videos, you can see how the language is preserved in that area of Taiwan,
Yeah,
relatively
interesting.
speaking. Yeah.
Cool. Um, yeah, I think that's really interesting. I've really enjoyed going through and talking about all these different things. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we kind of wrap things up?
I think we sort of branched off to talk about other things instead of Cantonese and whatnot. But I guess it's all related in the end.
I mean, I guess we talked about your podcasts at the start and stuff. I don't know if there's anything else you feel like there's value adding or not.
Yeah, I
Because I
guess
guess people can just go check it out if they're interested, right?
yeah, definitely go do that. Check out my blog.
Yeah, subscribe to his YouTube
Rhapsodyinlingo.
channel
Yeah,
and
yeah,
whatever else.
it really help because the thing about creating sort of materials for Cantonese learners is how to reach the actual learners,
Hmm.
especially when I'm in such a bubble. So it's really important that you help
Yeah.
me, spread the word to help people, help me help people with their
Yeah, I
learning.
mean, I won't get your hopes up too much because, I don't have a lot of subscribers either, but at least it's a few people, maybe.
I mean, your subscriber audience would be more like the foreigner,
Yeah,
the Western kind of people. So they would be the people who need it. Whereas my
quite
subscribers
low.
is sort of like lots of Hong Kong people.
Yeah. So, yeah. Makes sense. Cool.
Yeah,
No, yeah, thank you very much for chatting. And we didn't actually speak about your polyglot experience learning languages other than that, but I'm sure we can get to that in
we can do that
another
another
video,
time. Yeah,
maybe.
it's really fun.
I kind of feel like the video is long enough because it isn't always done. It's just
Yeah,
nerded out and
exactly.
talked about Chinese stuff. But,
We're sort of approaching the live video sort of length.
yeah, I was like, yeah, this is too long, so maybe we'll have to catch it some other time.
We should do
Cool.
live
So,
next time.
yeah, we could do live and we can ask questions to people, but like, why the hell are you still talking about this?
Mm.
Cool. Yeah,
And also, I
anyway,
should visit you when this is all over.
yeah, for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. And then
Yeah,
I can go and I can ask Muse to come as well and we can all hang out.
lovely.
Maybe. Cool. So yeah, thank you very much for anyone who's actually made it this far in the video. I
Not at
really
all, not at all.
appreciate it. And if you're actually interested in, Cantonese like resources or just, tips on learning languages in general, I'm pretty sure Israel has some great because your YouTube channel doesn't have a lot at the moment, does it? The
Not at the
Rhapsodyinlingo?
moment. It's half of it is the podcast, but I have written quite some blog articles about learning Cantonese or the resources that are coming out right
Uh-huh.
now. So
Yeah.
you might be able to link some of the posts.
Did you know the guy who does howtolearncantonese.com? Because he's putting out some new stuff like short stories with audio and things as well recently,
I
which
don't
is quite
actually know that site. I should check it out.
cool.
Okay.
I'll add that to the description as well for
Yeah,
anyone who's
definitely.
interested. Cool. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.
Bye.